goes after me, but I'm going to try to move through so that I can avoid the wall that we will all hit with the meat coma. That's my little barbecue, man. It's feeling good right now. So, Randall has asked me to speak about marketing and recruiting. And so, certainly, I want to put some cards on the table. We've had some great things that have kind of happened at UMHB this last year, but I want to make a disclaimer from the very beginning that I'm going to kind of tell you a story about how I've kind of come to this and went about it at UMHB. But to be very clear, my story will be different from your story. My marketplace is different from your marketplace. I think there are some things that I will present today that can be helpful. And not just marketing, but establishing community and defining kind of goals and mission. But if you were waiting for a silver bullet, obviously, it sounds like the silver bullet is just change the names of your degrees, right? I mean, that'll just get you. So, I mean, you could have saved your 20 minutes of hearing from me. So, anyway, I just wanted to make that disclaimer. And in the great tradition of Southerners, I'm gonna start by telling the story. But again, it's marketing and recruiting. Where are the students? How do we find them? And how do we engage them? So I will start my story with a little personal background. It all begins with me. I actually grew up in the South during the Jesus movement, so I like to say that I have sung some of the worst church music ever. But I will say, as much as I also love my time, I did some work in Los Angeles with a large Catholic church writing masses for their rock group. Post-Vatican II Catholic church music can give Jesus movement music a run for its money in that regard in some ways. But the reason I mention this, other than showing a sharp little shot of me in a leisure suit, is to explain that my dad was a small groups pastor. Again, I grew up in a mega church, and so I grew up hearing around the dinner table strategies for how to make a big church personal. And how do we bring community to a big body of people? And so it's amazing how many of those things are just not just about church. So often I think we try to solve problems we think they're just church problems, and they aren't. They're not just church music problems, they're not just music department problems. They're issues that the entire humanity. I find that reassuring. I also find it helpful to know that maybe some places to find some solutions. Eventually, I did outgrow the leisure suit. I was just saying to James, where is he in the back? Is it James? Jacob, sorry, man. Yeah. That I kind of escaped the South and the Bible Belt and really Baptist community in many ways to find myself as an artist on the West Coast. And so this represents a re-entry for me being here in Texas. But eventually, I moved to Los Angeles and to USC for my doctorate, and as I was finishing my residency, I took Lake Avenue Church. If you've been to Fuller Seminary, you'll know the church right across the 210. So I took that as an interim, and I'd be very honest, I had never intended, because my dad's a pastor, I had never intended to go into full-time ministry. I wanted to be an academic and a musician, but there was a 120-voice choir and a 50-piece orchestra, and I will be very honest with you, that was a primary and a full-time position. And so that was a part of my re-entry into ministry. And so that was kind of a unique component. The next thing I did was kind of a very common story. As the interim there, I was there for 6 months. But like many people, after being there as an interim, I eloped to Las Vegas with the daughter of the senior pastor. I'm not kidding, actually. And the reason I show this is because that little wedding chapel there is that's a candlelight wedding chapel where I was married. It's no longer there. It's been torn down. And for those of you who are Rolling Stones aficionados, you will remember that this is a freeze frame from Hunter S. Thompson's famous trip through Las Vegas. That is him. So how many of us can say we have a shot of Hunter S. Thompson at the place where we were married? And there's no connection between that and what I'm about to say. Just after that, I accepted another position at Baylor Presbyterian Church, where I was the director of worship there, and I oversaw a large team of artists, technicians. It was a roughly $2 million annual worship budget with a full theater company, film division, resident professional orchestra. Someday I'd love to present on classical programming within that context. It was just an amazing I will only say that there's something, one of my highlights from that was certainly celebrating communion as I conducted the Philip Glass Violin Concerto. Just what a wonderful, rich with those resources there. That, in addition to my time as the head of church music studies at Azusa Pacific University while I was in LA, really shaped my approach to curriculum design and also, by extension, how I market and appeal to potential students. After that, like many church, one of the reasons why I didn't want to go into ministry was because my dad lost his job after a business meeting one Wednesday night. Just to be very honest with you about my story. And so I too lost my job after a business meeting after a failed, well, not a failed, after a business, after a building campaign that went $13 million over budget. And so one morning in January I woke up with a job. The next morning 7 of us no longer had jobs. And so that landed me for 3 years, kind of getting back to my rock and roll roots, in Silicon Valley, where I was in ministry but did no classical work whatsoever. I had a Gibson 335 strapped to my shoulder, and that was my means of ministry. Little did I know, and I think I said to Jacob, I really felt like in many ways in Los Angeles, I was doing ministry to support my teaching habit. I love teaching. I love higher education. I still love ministry and I love the church, but I know I really feel strongly I'm called to full-time teaching. But God helped me out of it and gave me a 335 for 3 years for me to be prepared for what I took on last fall, which is the chair of the music department and the head of church music studies at the sister school to Baylor University, the University of Mary Hardin Baylor. When I came, there were 47 music majors and 14 full-time music faculty. Church music was dying. We had old facilities, which we still do, but they're improving, but a beautiful campus. My advantage was twofold. One is everyone knew we needed to change. That's a massive advantage. Secondly, we didn't have a lot of reputation. And that is another massive advantage that I'll talk about, is being able to be more responsive and able to change. Morale was low, but community was solid. That was one of the things I really saw. Also, the relationship with the university was very strained between the music department and the rest of the university as things had changed and that decline had happened. And so networking with other departments outside of mine was paramount. The former chair, I think over the course of time, had kind of closed his doors, and there was a difficult situation there between him and his faculty and his students. I don't completely blame him for that, because I think any relationship happens in an environment. But that was what I stepped into. And the reason I say that is that since I've come, when I'm in my office, I prop open both double doors almost awkwardly, because I knew I had to change that culture. So, as you can imagine, those of you, we all know what that means for your family and how you get work done and when you get work done. But it was something that my department had to have, and so something that I did. And you know, this thing about community, I think one of the things is we talk about marketing and explaining the music programs that we lead, we undersell community and experience. Always we do that. And so I wanted to, as I tried to design a marketing campaign and approach to it, I knew first we needed to build on community. I'm a great fan of the Andy Griffith Show. I'm going to mention one that probably none of you remember because it was from the RFD days when the show had clearly lost its way. But there was this guy who lived in Mount Pilot and who had gotten the Mayberry newspaper for years and years and years. And he moved to Mayberry, but he already knew everybody's stories. And it actually kind of freaked them out. And it actually, in that case, it didn't work. But I've always had this strange thought about how can you present your community through social networking and through ways that people from the outside can engage with you to where they can feel, as soon as they step in, like they already know Floyd the Barber. And that was honestly kind of a concept that I tried to use, a mentality, as I designed, as we leaned into social networking. So there's a whole other session on social networking, that we can talk about. But we did that, and one of the things that everybody had complained about this old Presser Hall, and there are many reasons to complain about it. But one of the things I captured is there were some great stories. This building was old, and some amazing things had happened there. And right about the time I came, there was this trend on Facebook, you know you're in such and such if. And so, I mean, you know, classic Christian culture, I just kind of co-opted that. with your Impressor Hall if. And I had no idea it would become this little storytelling platform that wasn't just current students, but it was also alumni. And then, by the way, it's open source so future students can see it. And it has kind of taken on its own little life there, that people can kind of engage in that way. Also, in terms of how we function, as many of you do, with a website from the university, and I have to spend a lot of time with IT, partnering with them, and taking time. And so what you see here is the result. It's not a good-looking website, but we have this event scroll that what you'll always hear, anybody who comes in and gives you a consult on web design will say, make it dynamic, give them a reason to come back. And so the events, things that we're changing were really important. You'll also see our Facebook feed on the right. That was a Facebook feed. I rebranded the department logo, and we gave out free t-shirts, and so that was the melee outside the room when we gave that out. So that newest post will go right up there. So the first thing they see is dynamic. As it relates to this event feed, how we chose that, how those were marketed was also very, very important. So what we would do is we're trying to be as diverse with that as possible. So this is from a children's opera that we did, an image. When we had Derek Webb, we host commercial music events as well, and training. This is from Inkittable. If you had a better resolution, you would see that the girl in the middle has Down syndrome, and this is a program that we do each October where our music education students work with special needs kids. And it's extremely important to me that we have great performers and great servants all presented right together. The story of the impact of what we do. And so that was an important thing. Another thing we did, this is Lizzie. And this was the picture we put up, just as big as Cheryl Warden's picture, and that was when Lizzie's recital was coming. Because we treat student recitals with the same amount of impact as anything else. There are two reasons to do that. One, to honor the student, and two, to allow the future student to project themselves into that place. We care about student recitals, okay? There are certain ways we're positioned, other people are positioned in other ways that are advantages. Our advantage is, we got 14 full-time faculty and 47 majors. We can beat you with one-on-one. That's what I'm thinking, and so, now that's not one-on-one, just a picture, but understanding, we got to follow up, we got to make good on that promise that you mean something here. And so that was a way that we really, I think that marketing was effective. Now, as I surveyed the landscape of external marketing, and kind of saw if you've ever been to a TMEA, a conference, it's a ridiculously big conference. We do everything big in Texas, right? But not just there, but this was kind of how I remembered programs being marketed. They would either say, hey, look at our great concert hall, and kudos to OU for an amazing concert hall with a tremendous amount of people on it. Or they would say, hey, look at our tremendous reputation and the famous people like John Adams who conduct. So let's start with our reputation. I know what you're thinking, the same question I was thinking when I saw the ad, which is, who is UMHB? I had never heard of it before, so I could pretty much guess that most of the students probably hadn't heard of it a lot either. Next, let's talk about our concert hall for just a second. This is our concert hall. So imagine yourself here is not going to sell. Literally, there was some donor who went to UT who bought the seats. And I took that with my phone 2 weeks ago. So, and this is not, this is not some made-up thing. It's not going to work to kind of do the usual. But with so many companies, our limitation ends up allowing us to innovate. And so, by the way, this is Ecclesiastes, man. Nothing new under the sun. I'm not telling you anything that any marketing consultant with a brain in their head is going to tell you. But your answers, you gotta kind of clue in to what are your strengths, what's your marketplace. So I seized on this. Who is UMHB? And so I'm going to show you the design of our ad. The other thing we've done, the former chair had done black and white ads over like 5 months. Instead of doing that, I spent the whole budget on a couple very important full-color ads. I thought, well, let's go big and go home. Instead of apologizing for being there, let's try to put them in strategic places. And so the ad that I developed answered the question, who is UMHB? Focusing on how many people can we hit with one ad. And I basically created a You Could Be Here Benetton ad. Crystal is a teacher. Crystal's actually sitting on the floor with my son Drew, teaching him. Nick is a worship leader. Maddie is an opera singer. Jonathan is a percussionist. And by the way, another little tip about marketing, your faculty may come at you and say, hey, you know, we don't want that certain student because they don't represent. I chose the students based on who people could connect with. So this is a big difference. A lot of music faculty will come to you and say, hey, that student doesn't get as good at grades. That's not the point. The point is who will respond. This very student came to me and said, I don't like my hair and I look pudgy. And I said, yeah, that's right. And there are funny-haired, little pudgy Hispanic people all over Texas who will respond to you because of that. Okay? So understand that you will have to lead in that way and not listen in that sense. And the tagline was this: you can be a lot of things at UMHB, but just a number isn't one of them. We knew that we could set the hook on that. And so the overall ad looked like that. And you can imagine when you turned and you see OU, and then you see that, it's like, okay, you know, and I wanted also, I like things that people can kind of, you can see, I mean, it's clear to see what we did. I mean, we splashed color and we splashed, the more types of faces, I use a lot of faces in my marketing, the more points of identification people have, okay? Now, that's just the marketing side. Let me talk just a little bit about recruiting, because this is where that I think we made some good things, but it takes a lot of time. Obviously, like many of you, we maintain a database of directors, schools, etc., and cross-reference that. I took the step of assigning students, current majors, as well as current faculty, to prospective students, so that they had different points of contact, so that they felt, as soon as they came on our radar screen, that they had a point of connection. Next, I personally Facebooked them right away. I wanted to connect with them. I'm the chair of the department. I want them to know that I know who they are. You know, if Eric's getting texts at you know, at 11:42 at night, you understand this is something to. I mean, you've got to consider that wall between you and the student is you're going to have to work through that. But in terms of marketing, my Facebook page is not my own, by the way. I don't use it that way. It's a representation. It's a tool, and that's just the case in life. Unless you want to kind of have if you want to be self-employed and no one knows who you're on Facebook, or you can have two different accounts, by the way. You can have a personal account and your kind of personal account. I don't have time for my own personal account. So anyway, I would Facebook them right away. And oh, by the way, the other thing I would do is the night before their audition, I Facebook them. By the way, emailing, it just didn't work for us to connect with them. I Facebooked them the night before their audition. They hadn't shown up for their audition. I said, hey man, good luck tomorrow. Looking forward to it. And so that was, I think, an important component. The other component of it is this, and this is a little bit Big Brother, but it's just the reality. If you're employing people, you connect with them on Facebook, you know what they're doing. By connecting with them on Facebook, we charted their search. We knew the process through which they were going as they were deciding. We knew when they were stoked about going to Liberty and they went and auditioned. And we knew if they said, and there were students, and they come back from Liberty, we had one who was like, man, that's where I want to go. And we had another one who was like, it just didn't feel right. You know, these are emotional decisions, by the way. And we all talked about, I bought that car because of Consumer Reports and yada, yada, yada. No, you didn't. There was an emotional reason why in the end, it's the same thing. And so we use that not to write off students who weren't, but to focus attention in that way. And so I kept a big board. I have a real entrepreneurial spirit and I kind of dig this stuff. And so I assigned a likelihood score to every prospect we had. And it would change based on the input that we had from them. And a 0 meant they had already committed, they had already signed their letter to Liberty. Great, go with God, because in the end we're all trying to, and by the way, I'm showing all the cards. Our VP of Enrollment Management told me, I presented this to him beforehand, and he's like, I don't know if you want to tell them everything. I said, it's more important to me that we all, I mean, I'm not worried about it. But I also am just crazy enough to think there will be other ideas that we can come up with that will, you know, it's all right. But anyway, I rambled a little bit there. I assigned them a likelihood score from 0. 5 meant we had signed them. And as they navigated through that, we were able to focus in that way. And I think that had a lot to do with what I'll talk about next, which sometimes musicians don't like to talk about, but we really need to, I think, in the situation, which is the numbers, okay? So in 2010, it's 2 falls before I arrived, they welcomed 11 new music majors. In 2011, they had 35 auditions and welcomed 17 new music majors for a grand total of, as I mentioned, 47 music majors. In 2012, this fall, we had 70 auditions and we welcomed in 45 new music majors. We doubled the size of the department in 1 year. That's a total of 82 music majors. We haven't changed one, I mean, this isn't curriculum design yet. This is just answering the dang phone and caring. That's all it is, really. But and it's time. It's time that it takes to do it. So what does this, oh, and by the way, we went from 4 to 15 church music majors. We're not Liberty, but hey, percentage-wise, I feel like God's smiling on us. That's roughly 2 times the number of auditions as 2011, yet we brought in 3 times the number of students, so our melt rate was cut in half. In other words, if a student connected with us, they had twice as much likelihood that they would end up at UMHB than they had the year before. And that also represents 4 times the number of students we brought in just 2 falls previous. It comes down to dollars and cents in many ways. Dollars and cents translate into academic freedom and creative possibilities, okay? And so that change represents an increase of $900,000 in gross revenue and $30,000 a year. An increase of $900,000 over the previous year, and a total increase of $1.4 million in revenue for that class that came in. Why do I care about that? I'm not trying to be, because I mean, I'm not trying to be cool here. I'm trying to say those are numbers I need to know, because now I'm preparing a proposal for my VP of Enrollment Management, who, by the way, wants to say, how much do you need? Because we know that your money will translate into students being here. I want to qualify a couple things, because somebody could have presented those quickly. Sorry, I'll move. They could have presented those. I want to make sure you understand this. No change in scholarship money between those 2 years. No change in standards. And university enrollment was flat. The other thing is our average offer from 11 to 12 was actually 30% lower per student that we brought in. We offered less money on average, but brought in more students with this kind of approach. So let me just jump just to a few future changes as we go forward. These are more, because I'm just in my 2nd year, these are a little bit more far-reaching other than just ads and social networking. We're adding commercial music training. I started with commercial voice. That's the toughest thing to get through if you're trying to make the change. So I started with commercial voice. That was the chip that I cashed, and I feel we feel good about that. Art-based collaboration, again, going back to Baylor Prez, those teams, it was teams of artists and technicians, and that was really how I designed the collaborations. I'm interested in this NASM, this BM and worship studies, and what that could mean in the future. Pro Tools training, every one of our students will be trained on Pro Tools. This isn't a classical commercial thing. It is the ability to record, and whether you're a composer, arranger, and it won't get picked up by by Sony Classical, or that even exists. That's not the point. Being able to record is helpful for performers. Church music minor, we're exploring that. I opened my worship courses. I took off some of the prerequisites. I retrofit my hymnology course to be hymnology / or I should say congregational song / songwriting. What that means is as we progressed historically, we wrote songs in that style. And I'm a person who really believes in this crisis of creativity. If you've ever heard Sir Ken Robinson speak, he's got a great TED Talk on how schools kill creativity. I think we have so specialized our students that and this isn't just music students, but sadly it includes music students, that we have educated them out of their creativity. Wasn't it Picasso who said, everyone's born an artist, the trick is to remain one when you grow up? I really make sure that every class has a creative element in it. And I find that when I first ask them to be creative, they're in the dark. So that's something, as another thing that's very, and why do I see this as an important thing? Because of modern day. The church should be leading in this. Chapel Programs Partner, we've talked about that. This is a process, but it's a big bridge between the academic side and the student life side. And that's why I've worn out some shoes walking across and taking people to lunch. And when you walk across the campus and it's 110 degrees outside, that means something. Not unlike when it's 10 below. I give you that. Oh, I should say. We do have some improving facilities coming. I've also said if there are a couple of churches that were in such dire need from the turnover that they essentially, I approached them and they are lab churches for us now. And so where they're not running copies, they are planning worship. And that's been a service to the local church as well as an incredible opportunity for our students. A worship academy, we have a great prep department, preparatory department, so we're working on a worship academy to work with junior high and high school students in all of these areas. as they prepare. Got a downtown recording studio we're working on. Man, there's something about these little county seats in Texas, man. It's so beautiful. It reminds me of Sun Records, even though I've never been there. And so I've got this idea for a recording studio. They've got a performing venue there where all of our students play. And the top floor is completely vacant. Pray for us, because my vision is a center for creativity and design thinking that brings people. I was just at a wonderful Calvin college talking about some ways to do this just a month ago. And that's my prayer, that God would smile on that. Also, I've started C3, Conversations about Christianity and Culture. We can't beat Baylor, we can't beat UT on big production, but it turns out if somebody goes to 2 cities in Texas, they come down I-35, which is 3 miles from us. And so I grab on the cheap amazing people as you guys pay more money, and thank you, please keep doing that. Because the thing is, our trading card is not the big production, our trading card is high touch, we will see you. And so they come and I pay them a third of what you pay them, and they come and sit down with us for an hour, and our students live in it, man. So thank you for bringing Michael Gunger. I'm so glad he's coming to Common Grounds. So glad Mako Fujimura is coming to Truett. And I'm not saying this in a flippant way, thank you, because you're spending money that we couldn't spend. And some other people. Shara Warden is coming in the spring. If you don't know who Shara Warden is, learn. Go to Vimeo and search Shara Warden. She was at Calvin for the music and theology. Amazing woman. Pray for her, just in her vision, and moving to Detroit. This is a billboard that will go up next month. I pulled some strings. It's kind of kitschy, kind of dated art stuff, but it was all I could get with our graphic design person who's new from China in the course of a month. But what's interesting is everyone who comes to our campus drives down 6th Avenue, and that's what it looks like, and that's what the billboard is, telling people there's something relevant and colorful going on in the arts at a little town in central Texas. So everyone, shooting fish in a barrel, man. Everybody comes down 6th Avenue, and that thing cost me $600 a month. I went over to development because they're working on building some buildings, and I said, can you help us with this? Arts at UMHB, we just built an art building, and for them, $600 a month is nothing. For me, that's my whole budget. So getting your shoes on and walking across campus is the way that I was able to get that done, and a lot of legwork. So where are the students? I believe they're all around us. I think we have as many, if not more, students interested in worship than there have ever been in history. And they're participating in ways that they never have in history. Let's celebrate that. Let's not be the people who couldn't understand how to reach people who were saying, I want to be involved in worship. How do we find them? I think we look with new eyes. I think we have different molds. I think we have different ways that they're involved. Some of those ways will be as choral conductors who are worship directors, but not all. Secondly, and finally, how do we engage them? That's classic. We meet them where they are, and we serve the local church. So that's my deal. Facilitate our.
That's good. All right. Now, how does this connect where you are or where you're going? I'm writing ideas. I'm going to borrow a Mark. Give you a run for it from Central Kentucky.
John, some years ago we established a student ambassadors group in our department, and every prospective student is immediately assigned to a student ambassador. They contact them, they stay in touch with them. When the student shows up for an audition, the ambassador meets them at the door, takes them to a warm-up room, greets the mom and dad, and that sort of thing. It's been real helpful to us. It doesn't have dramatic numbers, but it's turned our audition days into what I call very family-friendly environment. They already feel like they know someone. We do the auditions where we do about 5 or 6 and then take a break, and the entire faculty come down to our recital hall where there's a video playing of our choir and other, departmental video. We interact for half an hour with the parents and students who have just auditioned or are about to. And then if there are more, it depends on how many we have coming that day. We do these on Saturdays. We as a faculty give up about 3 or 4 Saturdays every winter and spring, Saturday mornings mostly, to do this. And then we go back, do some more, come back, have another reception if we have that many students, and have found that's worked really well. The ambassadors do a great job. They are paid a student worker wage for the time they spend, but it's minimal, of course. And they also will man our display booth at certain events, our preview days, and so on, campus-wide preview days. But the music department ambassadors, clever name, I know, but I didn't name them, and I'm not the sponsor. But it does work very well for us in terms of staying connected with prospective students.
Okay. this seems to, in some ways, to be kind of a best practices sort of thing. Is that, you know, there may be philosophical questions which you don't.
If anybody has any specifics about something I did.
I was gonna say the best personal touch we've ever done, we stole from Liberty. And when I first came on to UM 10 years ago, I went up to Liberty, as some of you do, go to different schools here. You know, we're in this thing together to encourage each other, and everybody's been good about it. I went up there and met with Danny, who had a group called Voices of Liberty. I'm sure they're still going. Fabulous. The thing that was most impressive about it was that as soon as I walked in the room, they engaged me. It wasn't fake. They introduced themselves, and they were very sincere in things that we now teach our kids. So afternoons from 2:30 to 4, all of our ensembles meet. And they're all over the place. And so when students come on, we do the same thing. And it works for us. We literally walk them around 10 minutes in each group, and they'll do something for them or whatnot. They'll stop and introduce themselves. So it really has made a huge difference. Even the kids later will say, well, I wasn't so sure, and then all of a sudden I met so-and-so and connected with somebody, and before you knew it, this is where I need to be. So it's good.
Okay.
This is an outstanding presentation.
Thank you.
And interesting to me, because I'm on a committee that deals with this at the university where I am teaching, and we're dealing with some of these things. But I wonder if I could ask you specifically, as we narrow this down to church music majors, and you've got great ideas for reaching music students, or even those just wanting to be involved in music, and your branding of your program is fantastic. But for me, as I'm looking, and I work on two different fronts, because I'm choral director, I'm also in church music.
Okay.
But as I'm looking at church music, how do we bring this down specifically to church music? Where do we find those individuals? Can you
Yeah,
address
well,
that?
you know, I think I have two answers to that. Not that I have all of it, but one is make sure when you say church music students, are you saying just church music majors? Because I would encourage you to consider how chapel is a great way to recruit music minors or double majors if you have a BA in music. So I think it's a holistic approach to what you want to do is have the greatest impact on the greatest number of students. Some of those will be majors, some of them won't. So I think my answer as far as like exactly how to get to church music, well, working with chapel programs opened me up to a lot.
Where are your targets? You know, in the choral area.
Yeah.
I tour and clinic and work with high schools, and I go after the high schools.
Sure.
In church music, where do you target? Where's your target audience anymore? I'm not sure it's in the traditional church anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, you're talking about going to them. I think one thing that's really important is to make sure that the community that you're developing, and I lean on social networking, but what you're developing at your school, they will find you. I mean, like, make sure that when they scratch, they find something. I mean, that's why I started with that, because without that community component and with the social networking infrastructure, the marketing would have fallen flat. I mean, we could have put that ad in. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I make sure that that's the case. The other thing is just networking with churches, with high schools. I mean, this worship academy, I think, for us is going to be a great way to. Churches want their kids involved, high school bands and things like that. Texas is a big state, but we recruit a lot very close by. So those relationships, I think, are key. The other thing I do is, if you look at our site right now, part of our scroll is Michael Gunger, November 9th. He's got a book. You need to read his book whether you like it, you know, no matter what, because your students are going to have it in their heads. It's going to come out, and I'm pretty sure it's going to come out of this kind of concept album as model for church worship design from some blog posts that he did. But he's the most influential name in worship leadership, I think, right now. The students will know, so I put his face there. And when Derek Webb was, I mean, so those faces that they know, and if I can make Belton, Texas seem like famous people, come here, dude. I mean, you know, coming from LA, which strangely enough, it's easier for me to get people in Belton than it was in LA in that way. But those kinds of, it is, I mean, even though we joked about changing the names of programs, there is a sheen that sadly they're trained to, you know, the shiny thing comes through. But if you don't give some type of shiny thing, hopefully you have substance behind it. Is that, I know it was kind of a rambling approach. But
I think he's absolutely on target here. I didn't make my comment and give my opinion about changing that name to worship music today on purpose. But if I was in this place, I would have done exactly the same thing. Because the name church music to this millennial age group is a turnoff. If you put worship in the name of it, even if you don't change your degree, I'm telling you what, they look at it differently. And now, what I would have done if I had done that, brother, I would have changed the names, and I would have systematically gone through each one of the courses and started tinkering with course descriptions. I want
slick marketing for poor product is only going to.
I'm going to tell you something. One thing that impresses me about what Mark's doing, and I'm certain this is why his administration is looking at it. He is looking at numbers, and academics generally are clueless when it comes to budgets.
And then artists on top of that.
Yes,
Academics who are artists.
But I mean, I had a, for whatever reason, the last several weeks, I've been meeting with different people. And so the president of a significant university wanted to meet with me about his worship degree. So we sat down, and I started talking about budget numbers.
Yeah.
And he said, you don't talk like that, John, the normal academic. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you're talking about numbers and budgets, and you're talking about bringing in enough people so you can pay for what we're... He said, presidents will love you. Well, that's what's going to make us successful. And I'm convinced that we can, all of us here, can be really successful with those that are leadership roles if we just come up with a plan that pays for itself. And we started Liberty with nothing. We didn't have pianos the first year. And the Lord did it, you know, and I'm certain He can do it in your church, in your school too. But you have to be paying attention. And I really commend you, Mark, for this. It's a great job you're doing.
A quick comment and a question. The comment is in relationship to where to go. I found too that student minister conferences or general minister conferences are better than music conferences. So I think we tend to
That's a
only
good
go
point.
to like Association of Pastoral Musicians or
Yeah.
whatever. But like the Orange Conference, or those things were student ministers because they're going to have 5 and 6
Yep.
students in their youth groups already leading. And so to go say, hey, tell them to come to Sanford, that can be really huge. I think. My question is time. Give me a rundown of your week. Like, how much time do you spend with all this? Is it all consuming? I mean, you've got website design, social media. What does that look like?
Right. Well, I burned a lot of adrenaline in my first year, like we all do. So, I mean, but hopefully I've gotten things dialed in to where there's some sustainability. Delegation is key. Because we all depended upon it, and this may be a little different for full departments versus church music, but I divided things up because there was no way I could make all of those calls. The other thing is, I leveraged the resources that were around me that the university was waiting to get, but because the former chair had walled himself off, he was doing more work than I was. He was working longer hours than I was because he wasn't going over to sit down with IT. Instead of sitting down with IT and working through the design process, he was doing it himself. And that took longer, so I would say that's another component of really networking across the university. And then I also gained it. I mean, you were just coming out of this thing when you're in grad school, like figure out how to maximize. I have a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. My 7-year-old's high functioning autistic. So, and my wife is adjusting to living in Southern California. I mean, in Central Texas after having been born and raised in Southern California. I'm not doing everything right, but I've been able to do it in such a way that I can, the second year especially, I can turn my phone off at 4:30. I may do a little bit of Facebooking on my phone here and there, but yeah, my boundaries were much worse my first year. Second year they were better. Yeah. They've been better. But it's an ongoing thing. Dial in, figure out where the bottlenecks are. Why am I working so much here? How can this be easier? Always be thinking that way. Yeah.
Our institution, our administration is scared to death of social networking. The official policy is the school has one Facebook page, and that's it. So none of the divisions or ensembles or anybody can have a Facebook page or any kind of social media. They're afraid that information will get out that's inaccurate and we'll get our pantsuit off. How do you respond to that?
Well, you know, first of all, I'm not going to be able to give you, I mean, if that's an administrative thing, you've got a tough thing to kind of go through. The only I think I would answer it with an analogy, and that is, at one point, there was a belief that photography was going to get rid of painting. And then there was a thought that air conditioning was going to kill community in churches because the windows weren't open. And then, you know, and then the telephone is suspect. And then email is suspect. These will the means by which you can be stupid on Facebook or you can be stupid in person. You can make bad, you know, I mean, like that. So, I mean, I think that's something that you've got to really keep in mind as you present it to say, the question is, where is the community happening? Where are students? Because if you're just putting up pamphlets on the front of the door to your college, unless they walk by, they won't be there. So that's a waste of time. I mean, you can put up the nicest pamphlet you want, and in a sense, that's kind of what your institution is doing. But also to add to that is, who else at your institution would probably love the chance to connect with Facebook and with students? And whoever they are, take them to lunch and talk with them and say, how can we help to present not only a vision, but maybe even a policy? There are certain policies places put in, schools put in place. If you give them a vision that's not just for your department, that'll get you in the door better. And then if you bring some rules and guidelines, say, here's what we're thinking, here we've done some best practice, we've done some work on this as to ways to avoid some of these pitfalls, you address some of their concerns. And then if you say, and I would be more than happy to give you some numbers on what we've done. If it's like, hey, this other guy in this music department, he put up one Facebook page and he made 1.4 million, whatever you need. But you see, they need to see this is some objective data from how this department. It's a lot of work. But the thing is, eventually you're going to share that, and there's going to be an ownership, and you'll make your university better. There's another thing I mentioned, the Andy Griffith deal. I worked at a public supermarket. That was my part-time job in high school, and there was this training video, and at the beginning of it, it said, Publix will be a little better or a little worse because you're here. I don't know why it stuck with me, but it does. And I think every institution that you work with, that's the case. And something about, you come into an institution, if you can make your university better because you're there on music faculty, you will be in a small percentage of music faculty in many administrators' eyes.
Could I just ask the group, how many are using social media in your marketing or recruiting or in any way connecting with your students? So most of the room.
But just a little bit. We won't do it much.
Yeah, keep in mind, everybody will tell you, and we're not doing it great. There are people who make a living on how to, that's another thing to keep in mind. The businesses want to figure out how to use this too. Well, who is an alumni who's now in social networking consulting who would help? The businesses need this too.
Yeah, I'm sure it's this way in other cities, but in Tallahassee, our local arts council has workshops on social media as marketing tool all the time, every couple weeks. And they're getting another crowdfunding kind of campaigns which can be useful for certain things, and all these kind of new tools. So your local communities probably have resources.
Well, and Eric did a heck of a job and got university resources to create a 3.5 minute. It's a church video, man. I love the 3 minute 78 tune that fits on the record. I love the 3.5 minute video. They're worth resources if they're reusable. So check out his video, how he last year threw out the heads up on his program and the way that they sculpted it. There's tradition, there's innovation, there's heart, there's face. So those kinds of things, and that's more controllable than social networking. But those videos, man, you put a video in the hand of a student for them to watch where they are.
And then we put it on Vimeo and YouTube.
Yeah,
and I get prospective students all the time. We saw the video, tell us more.
Yeah.
Our parents will email, we saw the video, tell us more. That video has been huge.
Yeah. And see, so then, unlike the classic church video that it runs and then it's gone, there's a Sunday that comes every 3 days and it's gone, you put all this time and effort into it, and this, man, the more use you're going to get out of it, the more work it's worth putting into it. So something like that you can use, that you can make it relevant enough that it's got a shelf life of 2, maybe even 3 years, oh man. Get that done well, and get a photographer, get a videographer. By the way, I should also say, because as we started to fundraise, our development just came to us last week and said, we noticed when we need video of music going on, it's really bad. And I said, yeah, it's because we have a little crappy Canon video. And they said, I tell you what, we will pay for professional video recording of every major event that you have this year. So, that's, trying to figure out how your needs align. Especially with the more money that some group has, that if you could tag on to their needs, you can kind of notice my moray. What do they call those sucker fish that suck on the big sharks? That's kind of what I do. I've been the shark before. Baylor Press was the shark, but now I'm kind of back down to the grassroots.
I'm supposedly old.
Bert says he's supposedly old.
When is when?
Oh, when? When?
No, I am.
Oh, he says he is. Okay.
I'm always waiting for the next grandchild to tell me how to do this stuff.
I'm always waiting for the next grandchild to tell him how to do this stuff.
But in the meantime, I surround myself with people who do it well.
Yes.
But in the meantime, I surround myself with people who do it well.
Yeah, you have a resource in the area of technology. You have a resource. You just have to figure out how that it's sustainable. So when somebody graduates, you don't lose that ability. And keep in mind too, you will, no matter, it's the same as it has been throughout the time of marketing college. You are marketing a massively expensive experience to a 16 or 17-year-old. That will never change. That is always what we're doing. So I mean, that's something to kind of keep in mind.
And their parents.
Yes, absolutely, to our parents. Absolutely, absolutely.
Lewis mentioned the reception for parents as well as students. You've talked about Facebooking the students. How much contact do you have with the parents along the way?
You know, that's more usually on the phone. I mean, sometimes what I'll notice is parents will like our page. You know, I don't necessarily. I mean, I'm not opposed to liking them. I mean, I don't put anything on my Facebook page that I've been in ministry, so I don't put anything on. It also humanizes me though. I put a lot of stuff about my boys and stuff like that, show that I'm just real life and stuff. So they'll do that. They will connect with me in that way, but I don't target them the same way. It's more the student, and then more it's talking with them.
I mean, they've got it. The parents aren't comfortable also.
Sure. Right.
You know, the parents are a huge ally in that student coming to your school as opposed to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Other questions or best practices or observations? Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, everybody.